Hello, everyone. This is the 105th episode of the Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. Unfortunately, Mr. Paul Whittle from the 1888 letter blog couldn't make it this time. For this episode, I interview Dutch football fan Mr. Ronald Jager as we discuss PSV Eindhoven during the Kees Rijvers era from 1972 to 1980. Mr. Jager is a coach at amateur level as well. Welcome, Ronald. Can you introduce yourself and your trajectory into football?
Yes, I would like that. I'm Ronald Jager, and I'm 47 years old now, born in 1976. A big soccer fan all my life, I think. And I was growing up in the early 80s, and that was the period that Kees Rijvers was the national coach of the Dutch national team. And he formed, I think, the 88 team, the 88 team that became European champions. And from that on, I was looking back to his performances at Twente, where he started as head coach, and PSV Eindhoven, where he made his first victories with prizes and so on. And that was always a memorable period, I think, in the history of Dutch football. And we will talk about that during the rest of this interview.
Let's start off by summarizing the history of the PSV Eindhoven into the early 1970s and their status in Dutch football at this point.
Yes, I think PSV Eindhoven was champions for the last time in 1963. And when they appointed Kees Rijvers in 72, they weren't been champions for 9 years. And from, I think, 66, Ajax and Feyenoord were dominating the Dutch competition. They had the best players by far, I think. And Ajax appointed Rinus Michels. And in the first year of Rinus Michels, they almost got relegated from the Eredivisie. And after that, he, of course, had the luck that Johan Cruyff came through from the youth. And then Ajax became the best club in Holland for a long period. And Feyenoord also had a very good team at that point, and they became even better, I think, when they took over some players from Xerxes from Rotterdam, who quit playing football at professional level in 68. And the most important one of that was, of course, Willem van Hanegem. PSV was a bit of the province, of course, Brabant, south of the Netherlands, not in the west where the big cities were, and where they have a bigger mouth in the west. They talk much easier, and in Eindhoven it was more a bit relaxed, but you saw that PSV want to go to the top as well. And before Rijvers came in 72, they were just fourth, fifth, or even worse, and not a candidate for playing at the prizes.
Let's describe the trajectory of Kees Rijvers as a player and then as a manager up to this point.
Yes, he was, of course, a very good player in his days. He was a professional for a long time in France. He started with Groen-Wit in his born place Prinsenhagen. It's now part of Breda, of the city Breda, but then when he was born, it was just a little village. And he came to NAC Breda, I think, at the age of 14, 15 or something. And it was very clear that he was very talented. And he was, of course, a little man, a little player, but very technical. And of course, because of my age, I never really see him play, just short videos. But he himself, he described him as the Andres Iniesta of his days. So when you compare yourself with someone like Iniesta, you must have some talent, I think.
We have to mention that he played in France. He played for Saint-Étienne in the
Yes,
1950s, also Stade Français. Then he returned to Feyenoord for like a few years, but then he went back to Saint-Étienne again in the 60s. So he
yes,
was very
yes,
popular in French league with Saint-Étienne. And
yes. He was a big star there.
yeah,
And he still is a big star. When some years ago, he visited with his granddaughter a match from Saint Etienne, and he got a big round of applause because they see him there as a hero.
he ended his career with NAC Breda, where he had started in the early 1960s. Let's describe his start in management before he joined PSV in the intervening years.
Yes, he started at the amateur level at TSC in Oosterhout. That was his first job as coach. And after 2 years being assistant manager at Willem II Tilburg, that was under Jaap van der Lek. That was his coach, so to say. The rest of the years that Van der Lek lived, he saw as his mentor. So he was going to him for advice and that sort of things. And also, when he had some problems, he always asked the old Van der Lek for advice. What should I do? And it's not that Rijvers is a man who always do what Van der Lek suggested, but he took his advices very serious. So I think what some young coaches did with Rijvers later on, he did that with Van der Lek. A sort of second pair of eyes, so to speak. In '66, he was appointed as manager at FC Twente, Enschede, and from there on, Twente was then a year together. It was SC Enschede and Enschede's Boys, two clubs, and they merged into FC Twente in 1965. And a year later, after 1 year, Donnenveld as coach, he took over from Donnenveld. And then the good years of Twente started. The first year of Twente was not very much. And when Rijvers came there, he took the team, the club, to a higher level.
Let's describe the circumstances of his appointment as PSV manager in 1972.
He was appointed by PSV that year after 6 years Twente. And how strange it looks now, it was a bit of going back because Twente was better at that time than PSV. And PSV had a very difficult year under Kurt Linder. Kurt Linder was a very dominating man. He had discipline very high, and Rijvers had discipline very high also, but in a more human way, so to speak. And there was one time that one of the Van der Kerkhoff twins came to the training of PSV, and he did almost everything wrong. I don't know if it was Willy or René, but that's not very important, I think. And Rijvers asked him, "What's wrong?" And he said, "My wife is in hospital and she's very ill." And then Rijvers said to his assistant, "I'll bring Van der Kerkhoff to his wife because that's more important now for him than doing a training." So he set the points straight. At that time, it was more important for the Van der Kerkhoff to be with his wife in hospital than doing a training because that training went wrong. Rijvers later said, first thing was he should be with his wife, but he disturbed the training. So the training went better without him. So he killed two birds with one stone, so to speak.
Upon taking over, what was the backbone of the team at his disposal?
Yeah, he was himself very clear about that. He had too much the same players at PSV. And the same thing happened to him when he joined Twente 6 years earlier. Too much midfielders. And when you have too much midfielders, you have to put some midfielders else on the place because you have to play with 11 men, of course. And he was accepting the fact that his first year would be not so good. The first year of Rijvers was, when you look at the position at the final table, not so good as the last year of Linder. but he was always looking at the future, not only now, but at the long end, what will we receive? So he was at his first season almost every game busy with, I need you the next season, I need you the next season, but I don't need you, you have to go. And after 1 year, he selected through. And you see in the second season that it was better, the change between all the midfielders and some more other players. And then he made his first success, of course, with winning the Dutch trophy, the Dutch Cup.
So let's look at the first season of Rijvers as PSV manager, the 1972-73 season. So
Yes,
as far as transfers, he recruited the defenders Kees Rijvers from Den Bosch, Swedish defender Bjorn Nordqvist from IFK Norrköping, another defender Nud van Estonk, and also a backup goalkeeper Andre van Gerven. Now, the players that he offloaded included Peter de Witt to Roda JC, forward Johan de Vrint to Club Brugge, another backup goalkeeper Eddie Schrobzak to NEC, and Gerrit van Tilburg to VV Venlo. So, but the team that he had at his disposal included outstanding goalkeeper John van Beveren. In defense, you had the Danish Henning Munk Jensen and
yes,
Peter Kemper. You still had Marinus van Dinter, Adri van Kraai, Plunstrik, and Oki Hokema, Harry Loops, another Danish player, Ben Schmidt Hansen, and one of the stars of the team, Willy van der Kuylen. So that was the backbone of the players at his disposal. So this first season, like you said, PSV finished sixth. This was the era of the dominant Ajax and Feyenoord. But so there was work to be done. Now,
yes. And I
yeah,
think it was the first season of Rijvers in Eindhoven was the last season of the dominating Ajax period. And the 72-73 season was the last of the three European Cup winners seasons from Ajax.
right.
And then in 73, Kovacs left there as coach. And far more important, in August 73, Johan Cruyff left for Barcelona. So, and as I think most of us know that Cruyff and Keizer, they were bosses at Ajax. I've said it before in some books. Keizer and Cruyff let Michels talk, and then they changed tactics, and then they went. And Kovacs came in 71, and Kovacs just said, and that was very clever of him, Johan, you deal with everything, and I just make sure all your condition is good. And when you have to change something in the field, do it, because it's better for Ajax. And I think that's clever from a coach as Kovacs. He was more human. Michels was, of course, the disciplined man, but Kovacs let Cruyff just go. And that was for Ajax very wise decision of Kovacs. But after 2 years, Kovacs, discipline became a bit slack. And when then Cruyff disappeared, that was Ajax had to go back then, because other players were thinking, oh, we can do it without Johan Cruyff, no problem. But that was a big failure of them. And the midfielder Arie Haan, for example, later said, I was a big foolish boy because we needed him. And that made it for Rijvers a little bit easier, because without Cruyff, the dominating part of Ajax became much less. And then other teams could take over.
So yeah, so we come to the second season of Rijvers at PSV Eindhoven, the 1973-74 season. As far as recruitment, he signed Jerry Dijkers from the Graafschap. Actually, he was signed as a left winger, but Rijvers converted him to left back.
That was a very important decision. And I'm glad you start with Dijkers, because that was something Rivers did a lot of times in his managing career, putting wingers who were not quite good enough for the top as wingers, putting back at back positions. And later on in the 80s, when Johan Cruyff managed Ajax, he did just the same thing, putting wingers on the back positions because they had the urge to go into the front. And of course, they want to play attacking football at the other half. And when you have former wingers at left or right back, they have from themselves the urge to go to the front.
So they
So,
become overlapping defenders, basically.
yes, and then the left midfielder could take over from the left back, who was original a left winger. And that's a sort of thing, a little thing from total football, I think.
He also signed Swedish striker Ralf Edström from Åtvidabergs, and more importantly, the double signing of the Van der Kerkhoff twins from Twente, Rene and
Yes,
Willy.
that was agreed in 72 when Rivers left Twente. He wasn't allowed to take them back to their home province because Rene and Willy were coming from Helmond, also in Brabant, like PSV. And he had to make an appointment with Twente. He let the twins there one season, and after 1 year, he could take them over.
Yeah.
He wanted them immediately, but they made an agreement because of the respect he had for Twente. 1 year at Twente, and then they came to Eindhoven.
Yeah, and the players leaving included Jos Dijkstra to Roda JC, Oki Hokema to the Graafschap. The Danish
Yes.
defender Henning Munk Jensen went back to Danish football to Aalborg, and Jack van Stipend went to Willem II.
Yes, that's right. And you saw from that moment on that a player like Peter Kemper, for example, he was still with the squad, but he was playing far less than the first season of Rivers.
As far as the league, that season Feyenoord won the title, but PSV improved and finished at fourth place.
Yes.
More importantly, they won the Dutch Cup, beating NAC Breda 6-0.
Yes,
So,
that was the first really sign that PSV could do something because NAC won that Dutch Cup in 73. So they were defending their trophy, so to speak. And then they were demolished completely by PSV 6-0. And the most important thing, you mentioned it before, but I didn't say anything about it until now. But you said it between lines. Van Beveren and Van der Kouden, that were the really two stars for Kees Rijvers. And he had good players, but those two were the outstanding ones. Van Beveren and Van der Kouden, that were the two players that was his number ones, so to speak. And for Rijvers, the most important two players from his squad. So everything could happen, but those two, they shouldn't leave without any reason. If they had given $1 million for Van Beveren, so to speak, he would have said, no way, I need Van Beveren.
how important was this cup victory? Was it a sign that Rivers' methods were working?
Yes, he said that himself also in the summer of 74. It made life easier for him because it showed that his way of work worked, so to speak. And then he was sure that in a year later, then Ajax was still a bit tricky. And they have sacked Knobel, the new coach, and they appointed Hans Cruyff Sr. as a manager. But the training was done by assistant Bobby Harms. And Ajax was still searching, and they were also without Johan Neeskens that season. He went also joining Barcelona. And what Cruyff did extremely wrong, I think, was making troubles with Keizer. He stopped. He was making troubles with Ariaan. He left for Anderlecht. And he was making problems with even Gerry Muren. And Gerry Muren was one of the most lovely people I have ever seen in football. But when you make a fight with him, then you must have done something really bad, I think. So after one season, Cry was sacked, and then Michels came back for one year. But Ajax was struggling. Ajax was really struggling the years after Cruyff, so to speak. And you saw how important Cruyff was for the successes for Ajax.
Now we come to the title winning season of 1974-75. In terms of recruitment, actually, there was not that many players. Peter Dahlqvist, the Swedish forward, arrived from Orgride, and midfielder Bertus Quires arrived from NAC Breda.
Jan Poortvliet also.
Oh, yes. And the players who left included Yves Mulders to AZ Alkmaar. Hans Rubberink left to join Helmond Sport, and Marinus van Dinter joined VV Venlo, and defender Noot van Esdonk joined Sparta Rotterdam. PSV, a much improved PSV, won the title ahead of Feyenoord and Ajax, and also performed well in Europe, reaching all the way to the semifinals of the Cup Winners' Cup, losing to eventual champions, the magnificent Dynamo Kiev of Oleg Blokhin and managed by Valery Lobanovsky.
Yes, that was a great team, that Dynamo Kiev. And what is nice to mention, you mentioned Lobanovsky. When you ask Rijvers to name 3 coaches he admires, then he also says Happel, Lobanovsky, and I think the third one was Cruyff. So Lobanovsky he had very high opinion of Lobanovsky. And we all know Rijvers. Rijvers is a man who has some self-confidence, but Happel, Lobanovsky, he said they were ahead of me. They were even better.
This was Rijvers' first league title with a team that he had built and also that he had integrated. How did PSV improve so much that they became champions from the previous season?
I think that had two reasons. In the 74-75 season, the newcomers, Quars, Poortvliet, Dahlqvist, they were a much improvement qualitative comparing with the ones who left. Van Esdonk, I had never heard of him before I was looking at the PSV Rijvers years. So, and all those Poortvliet and so on, they were better, and they were also more disciplined. They more accepted the number 1 position of Willy van der Kuylen. Willy van der Kuylen, that was the man that did it. And to be it's a little drastic, like I said it now, but the only thing they had to do was make sure van der Kuylen is 100%. Because van der Kuylen is, of course, still, and I think forever, the one who made the most goals in the Dutch Eredivisie of all times. And I think that record will never break. Because players like him nowadays go to the big competitions after a few years. And Poortvliet said, Poortvliet said, until 78, we accepted Van der Kuylen as the big man. And Van der Kuylen had a very bad relationship with Linder. And Rijvers gave him confidence. He made him important, and he was very human to him. And of course, Rijvers himself was born also in the province of Brabant, and Van der Kuylen also. So they had this match. And Van der Kuylen said sometimes Rijvers played at the training himself when they had uneven players, and then still he was one of the best. And when a coach is doing it himself, Happel did that also. He was also a very good player, of course, in his years. Then the players have much more respect for you than if you not a good player in your days yourself.
On the wings, on the right wing, Willy van der Kerkhoff, and on the left wing, Harry Loops also had a good season in helping PSV win the title. In my research, I also learned that at the time, the Philips Sports Park was considered to have the best floodlights in the world at that point.
That could very well be the truth. Of
Yeah.
course, Philips behind them, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, this was considered an innovation at the time that at the Philips Sports Park, there was hot central heating directed from the stands. That was considered something that was a novelty at the time.
Yes, I think so, and that's not something I am making a study of, so to speak. But I think that could be another reason for the success. And what also is a big reason, and always a bit under the counter, I think, was the way River's wife was doing things with the women of the players. So she take care of them. Because when you have a good marriage or a good relationship with your wife or girlfriend, then it makes more easy to play good. When you have always troubles at home, then it's difficult to make a good performance on the field. So that was also a thing that Rivers and also his wife were making sure of, that players have a stable home situation and getting married and having children early in life.
After a very successful season in the league and also in Europe, PSV and Rivers built up on that success for the following season, the 1975-76 season, where they would clinch the double. Now,
Final against Roda JC.
yeah, and as far as arrivals, we have Welshman Nick Deasy arrived from Workington. Defender Hoop Stevens arrived from Fortuna
Yes.
Sittard, and he would be a PSV legend as a player.
Stevens had such a good relationship with Kees Rijvers that Stevens lost his father very young because of a car accident. And until today, he sees Rijvers as his second father. So that's saying something about their special commitment.
Many players left that season. Tini Mullenbrooks joined Den Bosch. Peter Kemper joined Helmand Sport. The Swedish defender Björn Nordqvist went back to IFK Gothenburg. Paul Postuma joined FC Eindhoven. The Danish striker Ben Schmidt Hansen joined Horsens, and Wim van den Dungen joined Diest. PSV would repeat as champions. They would win the cup title as well, beating Roda JC. And once again, they would have a successful European season. They would reach all the way to the semifinals, losing to Rivers' old squad, Saint Etienne, who at this
Yes,
point were one of the best teams in
that would
Europe.
happen again later on.
Yes. Oh,
As we
yes.
know.
Two more
Yes.
times. Yeah. In the next,
Yeah.
into the next few years. Yeah. Very good season where they almost won a treble. So Rivers' methods were certainly working, and many of his players were playing for the national team. At this point, the Ajax and Feyenoord era seemed to be over in a way.
Yes, in a way, but the 75-76 season there was a very important part of that season with the Dutch national squad in I think August or September 75. The Dutch playing against Poland in Chorzów, and Neeskens and Cruyff came at Tuesday to Poland. And they were training, and then was the national trainer was Knobel, the former coach of Ajax, and he quit the training and he welcomed Neeskens and Cruyff. And Van Beveren was very angry about it because he said, they are too late. Why we have to stop because of them arriving late? And then Van der Kuilen said something like, oh, the kings of Spain have arrived. And Cruyff thought that it was Van Beveren who said that, but it was Van der Kuilen. But Cruyff accusing Van Beveren of it, and Van Beveren was loyal to Van der Kuilen, so he said, if you think I said it, then you must think that. And I didn't say it, but I'm not going to tell you who said it. And They lost 4-1. And I think almost every player made a very bad performance in Poland. And 2 or 3 weeks later, they wanted to talk it out, but it was getting a big fight, according in Van Beveren and Van der Kuylen both leaving the Dutch national squad. And then we all know with conflicts, Cruyff was at his best. They won 3-0 at home to the Polish. And that was a big thing in the 75-76 season, because Rijvers and manager Ben van Gelder at PSV had their first disagreement. Rijvers thought they all had to come back, all PSV players, except from Kees Rijvers, who had a chance to make his debut in the national team. But René van der Kerkhoff would like to withdraw also. But there was his older brother, Gerard van der Kerkhoff, who also had played professional football. And he said to him in a rather aggressive way, "You are staying or I will bust your head in," or something. And then the Van der Kerkhoff twins decided to stay after all. And that was the first sign of some difficulty at PSV. And it was happening at the Dutch national squad. But Rijvers later said it was the first scratch in a very good relationship between he and the manager.
After such a good performance in Europe in the Champions Cup in 1975-76 season, were PSV looked upon as legitimately a new force in Europe the way Ajax had been just a few seasons earlier?
They might have done that, but I think they were too shy, so to speak. As you look at Van der Kuylen, he was a famous player, a very good player, a brilliant player, so to speak. But his character was not like Cruyff. Cruyff was, "Look at me, I'm the man, I'm the best." And he was, for sure. But he was convinced about himself. So he thought, "I am the best. And I can tell everyone I'm the best." And Van der Kuylen said, "I'm just doing my best, and I think I'm rather good at it, but I think there are better ones." And he was too shy. And when he had something more of the character of Cruyff, he really could make a big hit. Yeah. But that was not something Van der Kuylen had in him.
So after 2 successful seasons, we come to the 1976-77 season. As far as recruitments, we have Paul Postuma coming from FC Eindhoven, Swedish forward Torbjörn Nilsson arriving from AFK Gothenburg. Later on in the season, Tom Smits comes from NAC Breda.
Trivia about Tom Smits. Tom Smits came during that season from NAC Breda. He had played 18 full games for NAC Breda, and PSV was down 1 league match they had to do later on in the season. So normally when you had played 18 matches, you had 16 to come, 34 in total. But PSV had 17 to play. And he played them all 17 full length. So Tom Smits is in the history of the Eredivisie the only player ever who made 35 full matches from minute 1 to 90 in the Eredivisie. That was that season. So that's quite a little trivia for a soccer.
A whole extra match. Yeah.
The whole extra match, yes.
Yeah. So the players that left included René de Groot, who joined Willem II, Bertus Quars joined NAC Breda, Kloonstrik joined FC Eindhoven, and backup goalkeeper André van Gerwen joined Twente.
Yes.
So that year, Ajax would regain the league title, PSV would finish second, and in the Champions Cup, they would exit in the second round, I believe, against Saint-Etienne again.
Yes, it was against Saint-Etienne. Yeah. And that was a big nightmare for Rijvers, I think, that club at that time. Despite all the successes he had there as a player. And later on, he was making a bit humor out of it, because he then said, when I was a player at Saint-Etienne, I shouldn't learned them as much as I did, because I was getting it back in the 70s as a boomerang. So that was his little joke about it. But at the time, he was a bit disappointed and even a bit frustrated, that so many times the same club.
Yeah, they would meet one more time in a few
Yes,
years. Yeah,
that was in his last season from
yeah,
Rivers.
yeah. So undeterred, PSV were about to have their most successful season to date for the 1977-78 season. So
Yes,
most importantly, PSV recruited Ernie Brands from the Graf Shop, but many players left that season. Jan Wilrich joined MVV. Swedish striker Peter Dahlqvist joined Orgreit. Ralph Edstrom, the other Swedish striker, he joined IFK Gothenburg. And
yes,
Ton Wouters joined Helmond Sport. PSV would regain the league title, their third title in 4 seasons. And more importantly, they would triumph in Europe. They won the UEFA Cup title, defeating French side Bastia in the final. They also defeated Barcelona in the semifinals. We need to mention. So,
yes, yes. With
uh,
Cruyff and Neeskens and Michels on the bench.
yes, yes. This was Kees Rijvers' PSV at its height at this point. Well, until the 1987-88 season, was this the greatest season in the club's history?
In my opinion, yes, no doubt about it. And I even think, despite the fact that winning the European Cup for league champions in 88 under Guus Hiddink and Hans Dorier, I think that was the best season for PSV, because that triumph 10 years later was made by just 5 draws and a penalty shootout in the final. And yeah, I didn't much enjoy that as much as I did the 77-78 campaign. Of course, it was marvelous that they beat Real Madrid over 2 matches. They threw them out. It was then coached by the Dutch trainer Leo Beenhakker. But the 77-78 campaign was, in my opinion, more impressive. And they were playing much more attractive football.
Many of those PSV players later in the next month, they took part in the 1978 World Cup. And
Yes.
we all remember Ernie Brands' long-range goals against Italy, the Van der Kerkhoff twins as well. They had a very good World Cup.
Yes,
And
and of course we always remember Rene from the arm bandage
oh,
before the
yes,
final
yeah,
with
exactly.
Daniel Pecorella, who made a
Yes.
lot of complaints, and then it was solved marvelous by Ernst Happel, I think, who said when we don't when we are not allowed to play with Rene van der Kerkhoff, we have to leave for an hour and come back later to play, because I have to instruct another player, and that is taking an hour and a half. So we must wait then. And then the referee became in a panic, because there were 80,000 men on the watching the game. And he said, "Now then we took a little bandage about it and we can play," because he was getting really panicking, that Italian guy. And that was the power of Happel, I think. When we had a normal coach like Zwartkruis or Krobel, he would never dare to do that.
Yeah. And also Jan Portwill also made the World Cup squad for 1978.
Yes, and Adrie van Kraai was there as well, but
Oh,
he
yes,
sat
yes.
on the bench.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, Van Beveren refused to play for national team again.
Yeah, they were of course they were playing games with Van Beveren a lot. That began in Poland with the thing. It began just before the World Cup '74, when Michels threw him out because he wouldn't play. He wasn't fit to play against Hamburger SV. And then in '75 we had that fight with Cruyff in Poland. And then in '76 he was back and he would play in Iceland And then Zwartkruis decided to begin with Jan Ruiter from Anderlecht. And in 77, Van Beveren was in the first 11 against Russia. And on the day from the match, 7 o'clock a.m., Jan Zwartkruis knocked at his hotel door and he said, I have here the newspaper and you are not playing tonight. Jan Jongbloed is playing. And then Van Beveren said, why? I'm in the lineup. Yes, you are, but I am not making the squad, Zwartkruis explained. Cruyff does, and he didn't want you to play, so Jongbloed is playing. Otherwise, Cruyff and his men will leave, and we will not reach the World Cup. So, and that was the time when Van Beveren said, now I'm really finished with the Dutch national squad. And Happel has tried to get him back, but he refused.
Nevertheless, yeah, we have a memorable season for PSV and PSV players that year, 1978.
One of the most important things Rijvers did, that was the leaving of Ralph Edstrom in 77. And then he was looking for a new central forward. And he couldn't find it, or they were too expensive or something. And he tried Joe Jordan, for example, from Scotland. And nothing succeeded because either Rijvers didn't think they were good enough, or manager Van Gelder said they are too expensive. And then Rijvers said 1 week before the season started, I put Gary Dijkers back in front. So he put him back from the left back position into the front. And I think Dijkers made a marvelous season in the 77-78 season. And that was part of the success, to not finding another one. And then, we have Dijkers, who was, before he joined PSV, a forward. Let's put him back there and then see how it goes. And PSV was undefeated 31 matches. They were champions. And at that time, they were the only champions who became champions without one defeat. That Ajax and Feyenoord in their glory days didn't manage to do that. And of course, after they went became champions, they lost 2 times. But that was more to prepare them for the Bastia final.
We come to the 1978-79 season. As far as players coming in, we have Ton Wouters coming back from Helmond Sport. And later on, Piet Wildschut arrives from Twente and Skede.
Yes, he was also at the World Cup 78.
Yes. As far as players leaving, the Welshman Nick Deasy and Guy Francois, they both join Beringen. After the success of a previous season, PSV would slightly digress this season. They would finish third. Again, Ajax won the league title, Feyenoord finished second, and PSV third. Also in Europe, PSV again in the Champions Cup, they were eliminated in the second round against Scottish side Rangers Glasgow. Was this, in a way, the beginning of the team's descent, you think?
Yes, in a way it was. There were some players, and Rijvers always said the Van der Kerkhoff twins were mostly to blame in that, who fought after the World Cup 78 without Van der Kuilen, without Van Beveren. They were the big stars. So they had something above their head. And the discipline in the team, so who was the first category and who were behind them, Rijvers always had 4 categories in the team. First, the really top players. And in that category, he shared Van Beveren and Van der Kuilen, and for a while Edstrom. And after that, the very good players, the internationals, as the Van der Kerkhoff twins. But the Van der Kerkhoff twins went to think, we can do what Van der Kuilen can. But Van der Kuilen was one of a kind. And Willy van der Kerkhoff was, I don't know how you say it in English, but we call it the stofzuiger in Holland. So it's a bit the goblin man, so to speak. He dusted all the defending things for Van der Kuilen. So Van der Kuilen could attack and score. And then in 78, 79, Willy van der Kerkhoff thought I could set out the lines as well. And then the defending, he made a bit of a mess of it. And after Van der Kuilen left, he admitted I was totally wrong to do so because I had just to do my duty and not things that are not mine.
Do you think after all the titles and the successes in Europe, was it inevitable that also they would not be as hungry anymore, or also maybe fatigue from the 1978 World Cup may also have played a part, you think?
Yes, I think that was more. You see it after World Cups. You see teams who are champions the season of the World Cups, so to speak. And when a lot of players are going to a World Cup, you see sometimes they fall down. Their position is not as good as before. And I think something could happen with PSV also, but it would go on in the 79-80 season. So it was not a one thing that was just because of the World Cup. Sometimes you have a period that it goes very, very well. And Rijvers said afterwards he stayed half a year too long. He wanted to leave for Bordeaux in 79, in the summer of 79. And then he was not getting permission to do so from the manager, from Van Gelder. And then half a year later, they sacked him. And then he was furious.
Yeah, let's take a look at Rivers' final season at PSV for the 1979-80 season.
Yeah, that was only a half season.
Yes. So as far as recruitment, we have a Danish midfielder, Tommy Christensen, coming from Aarhus. Erwin Koeman coming from Groningen, his first
Yeah.
spell at the club. Adi Koster arrived from Roda JC, and Michel Valk arrived from Sparta. The players who left included Jerry Dykers, he joined Beringen. Arthur Hoyer joined Willem II. Kees Kraai joined Belgian side Cercle Bruges. Harry Tervier joined Helmond Sport. Twan van Mierlo joined Willem II, and Ton Wouters also joined Belgian side Winterslag. So a lot of players going.
Yes.
As far as the league, PSV would end in the third place. As you said, Kees Rijvers was sacked on January 24, 1980. Jan Recker took over. More importantly, in the UEFA Cup, again against Saint-Etienne, they lost 6-0 in the away leg, which may have contributed to his eventual sacking as well.
Yes, and by the time they had a lot of injuries, and he had just one fit defender left, that was Huub Stevens, and he was getting injured after, I think, 50 minutes or so, and was getting replaced. So that was a horrible match, because after 50 minutes they were down 3-0 already or something. So that was without any chance there. And that was the first time they scored against Saint-Etienne at home. And the 4 games before that, the 2 seasons, they didn't score a single goal against
Right.
Saint-Etienne. And then at home they won 2-0, I think.
Yes.
And then they thought, okay, we went through it, and now we can establish, and we will get Saint-Etienne out of the European Cup. And then came that 6-0. And then it was, I think the beginning of the end for Rijvers.
This was the end of this Rivers era at PSV. Do you think his sacking led to the stagnation that lasted until the mid 80s, until the arrival of Ruud Gullit and other stars?
Yes, I think so. Then Philips got more money in PSV, and they appointed in, I think, 85 Hans Crij Senior as technical manager, and he was coach at Feyenoord before that, and he knew exactly what it would cost to get Gullit from Feyenoord, and later on Ivan Nielsen, the defender, from Feyenoord. And then he took Vandenberg and Ronald Koeman from Ajax. So he was, I think, not the best coach in the world, that Hans Cruyff senior, but he was getting his commerce talents, knowing what you have to pay for a player of another top club. He was very good at that. And so he made PSV stronger and the opponents a little bit weaker. Because when you get Gullit and Nielsen from Feyenoord and Vandenberg and Ronald Koeman from Ajax, they are getting not any better, and you yourself get better. And then is the chance of become a champion, and also with more money from Philips as their sponsor, it makes things more easy, of course.
But that was not the last of Rivers with PSV. We have to discuss his short stint during the 1994-95 season. Can you touch up on that?
Yes, he was appointed as interim coach after they sacked Ademos. He was a scout, an international scout at PSV at the time. And the two assistants at PSV, that were Willy van der Kuilen at that time and Ernie Brands, they didn't have the highest license for a trainer. And by PSV, they said, we couldn't have, even for a short period, as a top club, someone at the bench who isn't qualified to train. PSV was a bit more Roman Catholic, I think, than the Pope. But they asked Rijvers, who was, besides the 74-year-old Rinus Goossens, another scout, the only one who had his trainer's license. So they asked him back, and he didn't want to, but he said, yeah, it's my club, so I will not refuse. And he came back from France, where he lived, and he was appointed at Friday, and at Saturday he was on the bench against FC Groningen, and he win 5-0. And the first match in 72 in the competition was also against FC Groningen, and was also 5-0. So that's a little of another trivia, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But he made 8 matches in the Eredivisie, and he put right what the Mos had done wrong. The Mos did the strangest things. He put players at the very wrong places, and he was playing players against each other, and that is not going to work. And Rijvers made it became more stable after Rijvers arrived again. He did normal things, and he treated them with respect again. And he made a good lineup for Dick Advocaat, who came in January 95.
During Kees Rijvers' 8-match spell as manager, we have to remember Ronaldo was playing. That was his first season at PSV as an 18-year-old. Yes. So, what was Rijvers' legacy at PSV Eindhoven?
I can quote Guus Hiddink. Guus Hiddink said, we had big successes in the 80s, but the basics were made by Kees Rijvers. Guus Hiddink said, without the arrival of Rijvers in 72 and his period at PSV, the Hiddink area would never had existed, because he took the basics. He made PSV. He set
the foundations basically for the future success.
At PSV. And Hiddink and Rijvers, when PSV was 100 years old in 2013, both Hiddink and Rijvers were invited, of course, as the best 2 coaches of all time of the club. And then it was so much respect Hiddink had for the older Rijvers. He was then, I think, already 87 or something, Rijvers. And that was, almost like he was his idol or something. I couldn't say it anything else, but the respect Hiddink had for Rijvers was very, very great.
I think we already mentioned those, but who were the most emblematic players of this era? Van Beveren, Van der Kuilen, or the Van der Kerkhoff twins? I imagine Van der Kuilen.
They were all important, but there were 2 who were above all standings. That were Van Beveren and Van der Kuilen. And I think when you look at the World Cup 74, it was always said that the only thing Van Beveren couldn't do was playing soccer himself. And that was the reason that Jan Jongbloed, who was a former left wing in his youth, was in the position of goalkeeper of the national squad. And I think a year or 5 ago, they were making a documentary about why was Van Beveren always put out of the Dutch national squad. And then they were talking about him not playing so well himself. And then Rijvers, who was then 92, and he said Van Beveren was an outstanding football player. Rijvers had, when there were injuries at PSV, suggested that he could play central forward and put Van Gerven in goal. And it was never necessary because at Friday the injured forwarding players there were enough back again to play. But when he had too much injuries during the weekend, there was a chance he had to make Van Beveren play in the central forward. And Van Hennegem, who was reacting at his comment, said, I never knew that Van Beveren could play soccer. He never showed that at the training from the Dutch national squad. It wasn't important for him, I think, because he just didn't do that. And at PSV at the last training on Friday, Van Beveren always played central forward in one of the teams and not in goal. So it was a rumor or something that Michels put up in 74, but the reason was totally wrong because Jan van Beveren was a better football player, Rijvers said, than Jan Jongbloed.
Following his sacking from PSV in 1980, he shortly thereafter he's appointed as the manager of the Dutch national team.
Yes, but first he had a short period at Beringen.
Yes.
And there he met Guy Francois again, Dijkers again, and he was coming too late in the season to get him in the Belgium first class. But I think there was a club getting not a license to play at the highest level again the next season. So Beringen was the year after Rijvers playing at the first level. But he was 17 or something, I think, and he was getting relegated with Beringen. But when he took over the Dutch national squad, the Beringen players were very disappointed that he left. They had very much regards for his coaching skills.
We have to mention this time with the Dutch national team because he gave debuts to the likes of Gullit, Van Basten, Rijkaard, Erwin and Ronald Koeman, and in a way, he set the foundations for the 1988 group that won the Euros.
But the players you mentioned, that was not too difficult, I think, to let them make their debut because they were very talented. But also he saw it in Van Tichelen, Wouters. Also, they made their debut under Kees Rijvers in the Dutch national team. And when I look back and I think the Dutch magazine Football International, when I read the Dutch journalist Johan Derksen, then he said when Wouters made his debut, Rijvers was completely out of his mind to do that. And with Van Tichelen, the same. But how important were they in 88?
Of course, he'll also be remembered as he was the manager during the controversial 12-1 Spain win over Malta that eliminated the Netherlands from the 1984 Euros.
And it is a big frustration for him until today. And he's now 97, of course. But that the Dutch, the KNVB didn't do anything about it. They didn't even get a protest in because there was the Dutch chairman of the KNVB, Jo van Marle, was getting a high position 4 months later at the UEFA, and he couldn't make interfering from protesting against Spain-Malta 12-1 because that would eliminated him for that big position in the UEFA board of directors. And that is until today. And Mr. Van Marle deceased in 1995 or something, is still a bit frustration for Rijvers.
In closing, apart from his PSV years, what is the legacy of Kees Rijvers to Dutch football history?
I think it's very great. He was a great player himself, but as manager, in my opinion, he made the foundation for the '88 winning. And I think it's a shame the way he was treated by Rinus Michels in '84. He made him sacked from the Dutch national team, and he took over himself. And after Michels got some heart problems, he let Beenakker took over, and Beenakker failed to qualify for the '86 World Cup because of the Groen header against Belgium. And after that, Michels was taking over again and made them European champion. And I'm not saying that Michels was not a good coach, because he was. He was a very good coach. But in my opinion, Rijvers was a better coach, and he was more honest than Michels. Michels had his way of getting somewhere, and even if he had to do it getting others out of the way and not at a very honest way, he did it in '90, as you remember, putting Beenakker again in charge and not Johan Cruyff at the World Cup. He treated both Rijvers and Cruyff very, very badly, in my opinion. And Rijvers was a man who loved the game and who refused to be very physical in a game. He respected it when another team was better. He refused to do kicking someone or anything. He was more reasonable, I think. And he could enjoy a player of the opponent making a very good performance. I think it was in 1968 or something. It was Ajax Twente or Twente Ajax, but Piet Keizer was playing at Ajax, and he made a wonderful. He took over 3 or 4 Twente players, and then scored at a marvelous way, according to Rijvers, a bit like Maradona against England in '86, the second goal. And then Rijvers stood up and he started applauding for Keizer. And Michels, who was on the Ajax bench at that time, said, "What are you doing? That was our player who scored. It was against your team." And then Rijvers said, "I am not only the coach of Twente, but mostly I am a big soccer fan. And what he did was so marvelous that I have the right to applaud for him, because I am completely satisfied with the way he done it. And I think we must all applaud for him. So good." And that was a bit Rijvers, who was not only a coach, but also, first of all, he loves football. And nowadays, he's 97. He loves youth football, not the seniors again, but he likes to go to visit his grandchildren and their children and watch them play. And I think until he dies, he will remain like that.
With that, I would like to thank you for this interview and
You're very welcome.
sharing your insight on the Kees Rijvers era. As always, feel free to leave questions and comments. You may contact me on my blog and on Facebook under Soccer Nostalgia. On Twitter, I'm at SP1873. Mr. Paul Whittle can be contacted on Twitter at 1888 letter, and his blog is the 1888 letter. You may also follow the podcast on Spotify, on Google, Apple, all under Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. Please leave a review, rate, and subscribe if you like the podcast.
I was speaking to his granddaughter yesterday, the granddaughter of Mr. Rijvers. She wrote his biography in 2016 when he became 90, and through her, greetings from him. He's now 97 years old and 7 months, and at 27 December, since then he is the oldest former Dutch international player who ever lived. Says he will reach the age of 103. So we'll see if he managed that, but he is at a long way, I think. And as a coach at amateur level, I still use some of his visions in my game tactics. So I'm very grateful to him, and it was an honor and a pleasure to talk about his period at PSV with you. And I wish everyone a very good 2024.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thank you.